fuck it. I'll never try a new thing again.
I like how that's how we start this this very special episode of Cannabis Legalization News with Miggy yelling at the camera because we've just spent the past, what do you think, 10 minutes?
About 10, 15.
Yeah. I got another error on my Facebook that I tried to zoom in on there for. All right, well, I guess basically the internet doesn't work on Fridays.
Fucking hey, dude.
Yeah.
I think it's the man trying to keep us down.
Well, you figured the man would be working for us by now simply because it's cannabis is basically legal, no matter where you look. I mean, it's 99% legal. And now I'm kind of, well, yeah, but it was a crazy week over here. I mean, my phone's exploded and took a lot of calls, and I gave a presentation on Wednesday, so that's why I wasn't able to make it then.
Sweet.
Well, good, man. So how was your week?
Dude, it's been a crazy week overall, even here in Seattle area.
Really?
Seattle Hempfest has now done a lawsuit against our Liquor and Cannabis Board, our regulatory body.
So you guys are suing over Hempfest now?
Or Hempfest is suing them.
For what are they trying to do on Hempfest? Are they just trying to keep it down or what?
So yeah, I mean essentially, so what the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board is trying to do is tell Hempfest and all these people who grow and whatnot that they can't advertise at Hempfest. I mean, that's the bread and butter for these guys, you know, is sponsorship. It's a 501 nonprofit, no shit, fucking. It's a freedom of speech type, issue.
Yeah,
so that's going down.
That sucks. I mean, over in Illinois, we don't have to put up with our hemp festivals being like very, very established and empowered like that. All of ours are basically startups.
Well, I mean, it's we're going into its 28th year. At this point, all this regulation is overreaching. What they're doing is one of the rules is they can't for like advertisements. It's some of the stupidest rules I've ever heard. Like a place can't give away T-shirts or give away swag. Like
it's weird. I mean, they have some rules that are built into the Illinois law about how you're not allowed to advertise to children or stuff like that. But I haven't heard anything so restrictive. Like they say, no swag, no nothing like that. Are they just trying to like stop branding at all costs of the Hempfest, or what's the state or the city going after by doing this type of things?
Well, it's the state. They're known as the Washington State Liquor Control Board or Liquor and Cannabis Board now, and so it's just part of their regulatory rules as far as advertising. I personally think it's overreaching when it comes to like another grower got a $1,000 fine for not having his disclaimer big enough on his page. So it's just petty nickel and dime shit in an actual marijuana magazine. That's kind of like saying, "Hey,
wait a second." So, like, he didn't have a disclaimer large enough in the marijuana publication itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're putting these regulations into not necessarily when it comes to like that of like in an actual magazine, but they are putting regulations into where you can advertise and that you can't advertise for cannabis. But I always thought that was different than what they're trying to do over in Seattle. But that fucking sucks, dude.
Yeah, the board just overreaches with some weird ass fucking rules. The infrastructure is good enough where I think they can step down. You know, they helped establish the intercommerce market, the tier system, but at this point, they're just nickel and diming people, saying you can't give away T-shirts. We're going to shut you down here. We're going to fine you for doing this. I've heard people getting fines for giving away a pen at the shops. So, well,
they're going to do weird shit. They're going to do weird shit. But have you heard like better news out of Washington, D.C. when it comes to the, what is it called? The Safe Banking Act.
Oh, yeah. That's been a good thing, huh?
Well, it is. I mean, as that gets further and further along the legislative process, that's really what I think is going to happen. I don't think it's going to be descheduling marijuana before you have an opportunity to give the banks a chance to get in and to mature the industry and to prepare it for when they could go to Wall Street. You know, it's just You don't necessarily change the legislative rubric before you've given the insiders a chance to wet their beaks.
Hey, did you see? Because of the FDA recent still haven't come to a conclusion. Some stocks have dropped because of it.
Cannabis stocks are highly speculative, so yeah, they're going to drop. But we're still in the public comment period. You could still Google public comments on cannabinoids, FDA, and you'll find and we should put it in the description as well, a link to that where you can then make your own public comments. And if you do own a CBD or a cannabis, I think any cannabis, including marijuana, shop can still make their public comments to the FDA and allow them to make regulations that allow the industry to continue to grow as opposed to stifle the industry.
Yeah, I know you're from the perspective because you're focused on Illinois, and I try and see the different grander picture. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but a federal judge recently denied a tribe their request to grow industrial hemp.
How?
I don't get how that works. Here, let me post in the comments or in the YouTube. But I saw this today, and it just shows how we're still feeling this out. For me personally, I don't understand how a reservation is going to ask permission to do anything. They're a nation, a sovereign nation themselves.
Right, but then I thought they were still governed somehow, and I am not an Indian lawyer. So I'm a Native American lawyer. I don't understand how the relation between the tribes and the federal government. But whenever you are reading the statutes regarding hemp, it always does say state or Indian tribe.
Well, what's interesting here in Washington, what they did was, and when 502 was coming about, when legalization was coming about, the lawyers for Washington actually had a contract. It has a contract with the tribes because they were afraid they're going to be undercut by the tribes. So there's actually a trade agreement with Washington State and the tribes here where they won't be undercut. Crazy.
Yeah, some of the states, I went to law school in Wisconsin, and that state has a lot of Indian casinos. And I thought that was how they always kind of got around some of the laws. Maybe they were going to do the same thing when it comes to marijuana. But then, because they have that sovereignty, well, we don't allow gambling in Wisconsin, but they do allow it in the Potawatomi tribe, which is down the block at the Indian casino.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like they're their own nation, their own self-ruling governance. But as far as you guys go, is it technically legal today?
It's not technically legal. It has been legalized by both houses of the legislature in Illinois, and it's huge. Like, I just got done because I've had so many clients come in. Oh, and that's one of the reasons why we've called this episode Dank Supply. Hi, welcome to Dank Supply. It has to do with this method that because I'm really into the hemp industry and also the cannabis industry, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, it would be really cool for the show, and then also for my edification and for helping other people for other companies in the industry and get into it and understand how the flower is actually grown. If I could have like a grow house or a greenhouse or some type of cultivation facility, but with the marijuana cultivation facilities, like it's in the rules that here for this is just the provisions on craft grow, that you're not really allowed to give tours. You're not allowed to let other people inside of that facility because they have to have a license to get in and all that. It's very controlled, very regulated. We don't want any marijuana going and slipping out the back. Meanwhile, it is easy to get a hemp license, and there's none of these restrictions or taxes or anything on it. So it's the same flower, hemp flower, cannabis, marijuana flower. You could grow the hemp flower with the facilities that you'd use to grow the marijuana flower and give like tours and explain to people how it fits into the grid and how you can make the systems more energy efficient, and then why that makes good flower and why you would want to do your trim this way and why you would want to seal your product with nitrogen and all those different things. And then I could make it like a whole YouTube studio / cannabis studio, and then call it Dank Supply. These are the types of things that I think of when I'm helping clients out.
I think Dank Supply would be a good Craigslist for weed too.
It probably already is. Well,
the B2B business for people who are afraid to it should be simple where somebody says, hey, I have 100 seeds or whatever. And somebody says, hey, I'll buy those 100 seeds from you. I mean, we have so much, people being flagged on social media, having accounts taken down. There's no real safe space for this B2B for cannabis or hemp.
Well, it's because it's totally illegal. That's one of the reasons why there's none of those types of spaces, because it has it's been legislative out of permissibility. I mean, it's it's a crime, and then as certain crimes stop being crimes, it is pretty neat. It looks like the craft growers are going to have a severe case of application stack. I mean, the applications for the craft growers in Illinois look like they will come in fairly thick, and they have to have it's, just going over and talking to other people in different states where they've had more years of liberalization of these laws, and just how small the opportunity window is in Illinois, at least in what they're calling the first wave. So they have like all the players that are already there in medical marijuana. Those ones are going to be the cultivators. Those ones get to the door first. They get to be the ones that are in business on the first of the year. But then come May of 2020, they're going to award 40 cultivation centers. But those cultivation centers applications, there's like 15 different aspects to that application that needs to go in it. They are going to need to be submitted by the first of the year. So there's going to be like 5 months where you like apply and you don't know if you got it. And then there's going to be a few months where you have to put the actual application together. And those applications for your craft grows, you have to have the plan like before. I mean, you need to know all the stuff. And like there's not restrictions, there's some requirements on the HVAC and the watering, and then the electrical and the zoning and where it can be. And what's that one? How is the business practice going to promote economic empowerment in disproportionately impacted areas? I mean, that's the whole social equity of it as well. And only 40 spots.
It's still a hard gamble, because that happened here in Washington where they had the open for licenses and people won licenses and had big plans. And then when they went to implement the plans, zoning was an issue. Many people couldn't put the place where they thought they were going to have a business. So pretty much people lost hundreds of thousands of their own retirements, their plan.
Did that come back? Well, let me ask about this then. So that was like getting out the gate. Now that it's a few years more mature, has things settled down and stabilized in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's a more of assurance. Like if you buy a license, you're going to be able to have a facility. Some licenses are being sold with the facility. So there's a more of a stabilization, but at the same time, there are places that have moratoriums still too. So people are trying to fight those moratoriums as well.
Cool. I mean, like when you say licenses, I mean, there's restrictions from buying and selling in this for certain time periods, and then also who can own it. So did they start with a fixed number of licenses in Washington State when you guys were getting started?
Well, yeah. I mean, here's a crazy way of our infrastructure is there is a 3-tier process. So you got the producer, the grower, and he grows, and then he sells it to the processor. So once he's going to package it, whatever. It was probably within the past 2 years they changed the rule where your producer can be a processor as well. At first you couldn't package your own shit; you had to sell it to a processor.
They've done something similar in this. So the craft grower can also be their own processor. We have ours called like the infuser license. So a lot of kitchens. So a lot of the people that want to make, well, it's not just kitchen, because then there's also the topicals and those types of things that they're doing now with the flower.
That would be a processor for us, because the guy would sell his flower to whoever who's going to extract that, turn it into whatever oil that's going to be infused with whatever product. We have a lot of white labeling product out here as well. So, I mean, someone can throw a name on it.
How hard is it to get a cultivation license in the state of Washington?
Now it's pretty damn hard. I mean, there is a freeze on it. They have X amount of licenses available. So there's people selling theirs and trying to flip it and trying to make good money. But, unless and that's the other problem, man. You see a lot of these out-of-state investors. A lot of Canadian companies coming in. Weekend Unlimited. I don't know if you ever heard of this company. They're a Canadian company, and I met them at a blowing of the biggest bong. There was like parts of the biggest bong.
It sounds like something that would happen in Washington State. The blowing of the biggest bong party.
Oh no, it was a pretty awesome experience at a glass blowing shop. But just seeing all these people with fucking fat checks from out of country, it just kills me.
Yeah. Well, that gets back to one of the reasons why I think that the Safe Banking Act is kind of acting as this bridge. Well, the Safe Banking Act hasn't been adopted yet, but I think that one of the reasons why it's going to win out, and I don't even know if they'll ever up or down vote it, but I think it'll become law with the budget because of that problem where all these fat checks are coming from out of the country, and so the powers that be, the operators that are American, they see the writings on the wall. They're like, hey, if all of a sudden this stuff's legal, what's to happen? What's to stop Canada and Colombia from rushing in and taking the market and then crowding out the local markets? And the way that the Illinois law is written is really about keeping that market fairly local. So how many cultivation types do they have in Washington State? Do they have like different sizes of cultivators like they do in Colorado or what?
Yeah, we have them they're called tiered growers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 being the biggest, probably, I can't give you the exact square footage, but they're pretty damn huge. But even
that's not what we have yet. Like Illinois might because that sounds just like Colorado, but Illinois might have to catch up to Colorado and Washington State over the course of the next 5 years with a tiered system. There's the craft, and that one is like only so many square footage of canopy space, and then there's just the cultivation. And I'm not sure if they have an upper limit on a canopy space, or if it's just they have that license, they can grow as much as they can grow.
Yeah, no, it's interesting setup too, because it's all about square footage for us here, and so some people are smart enough to use that square footage, and they grow in tiers. Start with clones and whatnot. So you have maybe a 3-tiered system in one room because they're trying to work with X amount of square footage. Period. And
wow.
Like amount of plants, but just the size of your room. It's a crazy little setup.
No, the one in Illinois is about canopy space. So it says like, this much square footage of canopy space in flower, and then this much of square footage in total. So okay. they kind of do those types of 2 restrictions back onto it. But are there various, so as you go up the numbers, because like I said, there's basically like no Illinois cultivators licenses that look like they're available. I mean, they're there, but they really might not be awarded at all. So are you able to like traverse? Are there fixed numbers of individualized license, or are there like 10 tier 1, 30 tier 2, 50 tier 3, or what?
I'm not sure about that one, but I believe they are designated by area. So only like X amount of license will be here in Western Washington, X amount will be in Eastern Washington. And I think that has to do with an opportunity type thing as far as, we can't have all the licenses in one area type.
Right.
But as far as the actual amount, I'm actually looking right now at the LCB's rules.
Cool. Yeah, that's the thing that's going to get these guys, though. I mean, like just reading the craft grow. I mean, there it is. HVAC, cannabis grow operations with less than 6,000 square feet of canopy. Well, there you go.
Well, yeah, and see, for us here in Washington, I'm looking at it right now. It says new applications, producer license, not accepting applications, processor, not accepting. So, they're maxed out right now. You have to find someone selling their license.
Yeah, and that's they call for a max out of 150 craft cultivation, but then they also, so that's a strange thing. They're probably gonna have to amend it if they want to go over 150, because they have methodologies to try to control the supply of cannabis to make sure that we have an adequate supply of it, and that might just get surpassed by having only 150 craft cultivators in like 3-4 years. I don't know. It's really going to be interesting to see what the demand is in Illinois and if people are going to be able to keep up with it. And it's the only people that are going to be open for business are going to be like your Green Thumb Industries, your Crescos, your Revolutions, your Nature's Grace and Wellness, the medical marijuana growers that are currently in the state of Illinois.
And that's unfortunate. You know, I think that all states should have done it like Oregon did. It was just a turnkey situation.
What did Oregon do?
It was turnkey. So if you were a medical grower and part of the medical operation, you're automatically recreational. You automatically have the chance to be recreational. The only thing that they made for their medical patients was a section of the pot shop had to be just for medical patients. You know,
oh, that's weird. I think what Illinois is going to do is similar to what they do in Colorado. For there's going to be two prices: price one for medical, price two for recreational, and they're just going to reflect the different type of taxation that's on them.
Yeah, and like you said, supply and demand of watching what happens. It's going to be there'll be a flex with that. Hey, you got a question from Cypress TK, off topic. Tom, I sent an email. I hope it didn't end up marked as spam. Whenever you're not busy, I would appreciate if you could check it out. I get some questions I can't find answers for.
Yeah, I actually did. So that probably, it gives us an opportunity to try to find where did that guy email me. There it was. Yeah, like the questions that Cypress asked, one of them, if County A allows recreational and County C has a lounge with consumption, those types of hypotheticals, they call for more hypotheticals because I don't know of any place that allows for a lounge for consumption or these types of recreational use in one county versus another county. Typically those are like on a statewide thing. Then of course, a municipality can make no, I don't think they can. And it's going to depend on how they're written. Have you ever heard, Miggy, have you ever heard of like in California, can they, because they've legalized it there through ballot initiative, can one city say like, no, we're still going to keep it criminalized?
Yeah, well, they have moratoriums. They just can't grow there.
That's kind of what I thought. Like they don't have to allow the cultivation, but they just can't say that like it's still illegal. I mean, like your state has spoken to it, so you kind of have these hierarchies in law. So like if the municipality says, murder's legal here, we don't recognize the state of Illinois' prohibition against murder, provided that it's done according to the church doctrine of, right. But no, they aren't going to be able to allow that. And then, so these lounges, that is kind of an interesting thing. Have you seen, I've seen some coming out of Chicago and I've seen some coming out of New York. Have you seen these speakeasies or like that they're having, or they're calling them like cannabis supper clubs? Have you seen those?
So up here, when it was medical, consumption was happening on all over the place. I could buy dabs at the same place. They'd have a section off for me where I can go do my dab, take a minute, and then go home. And then some places even open up just specifically for that. There used to be the Northwest Cannabis Market. They actually moved down south to Oregon, and now they're the Northwest Cannabis Club. And that's all it is. It's just a place for safe consumption.
Huh.
But, the party thing is something that, like, my friend and I are trying to work out now. We want to do events and have cannabis consumption and drive on the bus. And it's a fun time. But with our regulators cracking down, say like with the Seattle Hempfest stuff, they're saying people can't sponsor things. That's going to be an issue because that's how we're going to rely on trying to pay for this bus and all the other amenities that we provide. With Seattle Hempfest, I'm very curious on how the influence of an agency, an arbitrary agency, has over this, because Hempfest itself is a nonprofit protest, right? So everybody's voluntarily there. The money that comes in when people buy booths and whatnot pays for the functionality of it. So, and the thing about Seattle Hemp is, even though it's a protest for cannabis, there's always been that one statement where they don't encourage consumption, right? They always say, don't consume, right? So,
well, at least even alcohol gets to say, hey, don't forget to drink responsibly. But you can still drink responsibly.
But my thinking is, though, too, so if the LCB is trying to dictate what this protest does, but yet they don't promote consumption, they just promote health and wellness about it. So how are you going to come and dictate what is advertised and what not? That seems to be a very crazy quandary that can help out maybe me when I have my small event.
Maybe, but then you know, you should have the right to advertise. But then what? You have to look at what laws they're trying to protect. I mean, if it really is in the regulations, like, sorry, there's no advertising for marijuana allowed, and that qualifies as advertising for marijuana. And some of that might actually be in the statute. But here is an example of what we were talking about with the supper clubs. How is this anything but like plain Jane? Like, this is the marijuana supper clubs in Chicago. All right, it's not criminal enterprises; it's a dinner party. All right, but this dinner party is people are 5-course meal. I understand it, $115 a ticket, and they have cannabis in there, and
Yeah.
so like that's straight up. All right, it's not. You know, whoa, I'm not sure why I zoomed in like that. That is weird. That's what I get for trying technology. But it's not like these supper clubs aren't dealing drugs, because it's literally what they're doing. I mean, they're having somebody come over for dinner, and they're charging you a fuckload of money for it.
But you know, the thing is too, and this is what we're doing in Washington, how we're trying to get around some stuff, is private parties, right? So
Right.
if we have these buses that we do pick up people and we give them rides and we consume and we have a good time, and it's very safe. You know, the driver's sober perfectly and we're all having a good time. But you know, with like that costs money. You know, the bus costs money, the goods that we're consuming cost money. So like there should be a lot of these sponsors, but in the end, it's just a party with private individuals. You know, it's not a drug deal.
Well, okay. People were still paying money for drugs, but of course it's in Chicago, so maybe they've decriminalized, and maybe they just don't care so much that they're now able to do these types of things. But it would still constitute like the untaxed usage of cannabis. So maybe they'll crack down on them, or maybe they'll get. Could this be? I don't see why it couldn't. Could this be covered by the infuser license in Illinois? Maybe it could be covered by an infuser license. I don't know. I'd have to read that section.
Well, I think the biggest thing too is you're gonna have to figure out whoever's controlling your liquor is gonna be the same person that controls the cannabis rules.
No, it hasn't. You know who they're putting in charge in Illinois? They are putting in charge the liquor department.
Really?
No, they're putting in charge the USDA. Well, the Department of Agriculture. It's not the USDA in Illinois. It'd be the Illinois Department of Agriculture. Yeah, the Department of Medicinal Plants has been growing, and so they haven't put it into like tobacco, alcohol, or those types of regulatory bodies. They put it into the Department of Agriculture, and then they have one particular wing in there for medicinal plants. And it started with medical cannabis, and then it expanded this year to hemp. And then from the review of Illinois' adult use law, the Regulate and Tax Cannabis Act, or the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, that is expanding. And I mean, they're the same, because like, do they have scoring in Washington State for your applications?
Not that I know of.
All right. Well, in Illinois, with both these new ones, these new cultivators, the craft ones, and then also the medical marijuana cultivators, they had to do these applications. Those applications are then scored. It's not all that dissimilar that is going into the other states now for the cultivation facilities. They have to apply and then get scored based on whether or not the plans are going to be able to actually do the job, and then also comport with the purposes of the law, and then have the right team and have the right people that are involved. So that's one of the reasons why these applications are going to be so expensive, is simply because you have to have everything ready to go before you go. Usually people are able to, and that, well, you have to have everything ready to go before you're given the permission to go, which is even more nerve-wracking.
Well, those. So we don't have those supper parties in Washington, but they have them in LA. I've seen them. They have these impromptu. They call them secret sessions or whatever the hell they want to name it.
Bong Appetit. Have you ever seen that? Yeah, Bong Appetit. Good show.
I want to live in that house.
Oh man, I want to have because I want that weed closet. Just be like, well, time to cook something. Better see what we have in the weed closet. And it was just jars of beautiful nuggets.
So did you hear about the VA and the veterans being denied fucking home loans?
I didn't hear about them being denied home loans. I've heard about them being denied access to medical cannabis, and that veterans have to be very careful with their medical cannabis use because it might jeopardize the health care that they do get from the VA.
Yeah, so I just posted the comments. Well, recently, a bunch of lawmakers put on a letter to press the VA on to not do denials, but there was a story. He's not named. He didn't want to be named, but he works in the cannabis industry in Massachusetts, and he applied for his VA loan. He's a manager of a store, and he got denied, saying that his occupation was unreliable.
His occupation is unreliable.
Yeah.
Is that? I don't understand what it means by his occupation is unreliable. Does that mean that he, because he works in cannabis, it could all just be seized from him, or what does that mean?
I just think that they're using it as a Schedule One. It's still a Schedule One, and so just like the bank industry. Well, I mean, it is a banking industry though,
right?
Because a VA loan works where the VA will make a promise to me that if I get a $100,000 house, that they'll cover whatever the that 30% when you do that when you buy a home for the first
down payment.
Yeah, the down payment. With the VA loan, you don't have to do that. The VA says we'll cover that if there's ever an issue, and so the VA it's a promise of note. And then I just go to the bank. They say, okay, you're good to go. Here's your loan. But if he can't get past that point with the VA, the bank will never see him. It's a pretty fucked up situation.
Yeah, the VA is probably one of the worst aspects of it when it comes to the Schedule One substance. I mean, I understand. Like, I still don't think that that they've been screwing the veterans over for this long. What's a few more years, which is a really callous statement, but at the same time, it's no more callous or no less callous than the continuation of Schedule One cannabis. The real thing though is just that with making the Safe Banking Act the actual law, you're going to allow these financial institutions to be able to provide services to those companies, and those companies are then going to be able to get ready to go toward Wall Street and get listed, and then also have the ability to expand their operations so that they'll be ready to compete when Schedule One cannabis is a thing of the past. But what do you do for all the veterans that are out there that are, that's what really sucks. I mean, that was the thing that the VA, I can't remember, it was a couple months now. We were following them at the time, and they actually have a Twitter account, and the Twitter account is like not followed at all, which I thought was like really, really funny. And it would tweet out stuff that would support the Trump administration, and because it's not the Trump administration, it's been all executives, but because the law says that it's a Schedule One substance, you can't use it, even though it's a federal benefit. And that is butting of heads between state and federal just sucks.
Yeah. I mean, there's still it's just another example of people still getting hurt over this fucking bullshit prohibition.
Yeah. Yep. They still are, and they're still going to. I mean, like, not only that, they do have reasonable numbers and restrictions on who and who cannot get a liquor license. But I don't know if they necessarily have like a hard, fast number. It's like, hang on, we're only allowed to have 140 breweries in the whole state. That's it. And those are only 140 craft breweries. And we have to have a bureau that's in the Department of Agriculture watching the market to let us know when we have an adequate supply of beer. I mean, when you think of it that way, that sounds really silly.
Yeah. Well, just like Oregon, who grew too much, but yet Nevada doesn't have enough, and they're border states.
So, yeah, wouldn't it be lovely if the cannabis that doesn't have anybody to smoke it in Oregon could somehow go to Nevada, and then all those people that are traveling to Nevada to smoke and also gamble could have some nice Colorado homegrown.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues. I mean, what do you think about this recent death?
Oh yeah. Like you sent me the link, and that link it's one of those things that sometimes in cannabis news stories, there is the bombastic claim that somebody dies of THC overdose. It's silly. It's just silly. But yeah, you sent me one around. It was from MJ9.com. Louisiana coroner right there, you should be suspect. I'm not sure any Louisiana coroner knows. Well, I'm not gonna say that. Louisiana coroner says woman died of THC overdose.
I question the educational system down there, dude. It's okay.
Well, yeah, the coroner's claim would make it the first ever reported death of a marijuana overdose, but the result is also drawing fire from skeptics. No shit.
I've been trying for 20 years to overdose, and it hasn't worked out yet.
Are you sure that you're using enough THC? Maybe you just haven't inhaled correctly.
Maybe I gotta do that extra strong dankness.
Oh yeah, you need that. You need the extra strong dankness. But the toxicology report said she had a 8.4 nanograms per milliliter of blood, which really I don't think is all that high. I don't know. I'm not really familiar with how many nanograms per milliliter of blood my current THC levels are at.
I just don't see how much THC. First off, THC is psychoactive. It's not a react to your body. Like, it doesn't stop your heart. It's not gonna. You might have a little stress. You might, a little freakouts every once in a while, but it's not gonna kill you.
Well, hang on. That's not according to this Louisiana coroner. This St. John the Baptist Parish Coroner Christy Montague told the New Orleans Advocate that the woman's death could be the case, the first death on record solely as a result of THC exposure. And then the Montague went on, I think that's how you pronounce it. Again, it's because it's in Louisiana, there's a lot of French influence down there, and I could just totally butchering your name. So the coroner would reach for comment and said, I'm thinking this lady must have vaped this THC oil and got a high level in her system, and it made her stop breathing, like respiratory failure.
Like thousands of years of all this use and consumption, and this one lady is the lady that dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the news.
Well, and then, of course, somebody was reached for the counterpoint, and then a former senior policy advisor at the White House Office of Drug Control Policy had a different take. Keith Humphreys, he said, we know from really good survey data that Americans use cannabis products billions of times a year collectively, not millions of times, but billions of times. So that means if the risk of deaths was 1 in a million, we would have a couple thousand cannabis overdose deaths a year.
Especially in the now recreational states.
Yeah, it's part of me thinks that there's a coroner in Louisiana named Montague that right now is going, got on the national news. I told you I could do it. I told you I could do it. Yeah.
Oh, that's given though, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, like, we live in a fame-hungry culture. I could see a sleepy backwater bird like that saying, like, yeah, I'm going to say something stupid, see where it gets me. Work for Trump.
Yeah, see where it got. What else we got going on?
Well, I mean, like, the week with Illinois was just ridiculous. I mean, like, that's the weird thing. Last Friday, there was Illinois legalizing it for the first time legislatively. And meanwhile, the FDA is having their hearing as to where to place or what to do with CBD. And that pretty much just, I haven't really heard much from it. I got swept under the rug for me simply because of the excitement surrounding Illinois.
Well, and let's not forget, the one that got me by surprise was Delaware.
Well, the Delaware, I can't believe that those ones hadn't legalized yet because they're smaller and they're also New England. So I figured that they were a little bit more liberal, like Vermont. Vermont's legalized, right?
Well, and Delaware is on the border of like Maryland and the DC area. I used to travel there, and it's still a very conservative. Well, 20 more years ago, it was a very conservative area still.
I'm sure it still is, or it's like wealthy. So like, you know how risk averse the rich are. They have a lot to lose.
Yeah, everybody wants to be cautious, but Delaware thing, they're making headway though. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it is. Oh crap! I meant to go back to returning to one of Cypress's questions. Let's see here. If he would qualify for a card in Illinois but couldn't afford it, and he had to travel from a neighboring state, I wouldn't. You're not going to be able to qualify then. Like, even if you can or can't afford it, I don't think that in medical marijuana states you are able to get a medical card if you do not live in that state. You know?
I think you're correct. It's got to be a residency thing.
Yeah, kind of like, you know, you can't grow your own in America. Well, not America. You can't grow your own in the state of Illinois after January 1st of 2020 unless you are both a resident of the state. It's also your primary residence, and also you are a medical patient.
And you know, the whole state singularity thing is one of the reasons why I think branding is a hard thing for people to stand by. You know, because you don't have the same weed or same type of cannabis in Washington that you do in California. So those guys, same company, is going to have to get two different farmers to supply their product, which I think it's kind of deceiving when you know, I understand like you want to trust the brand and say, okay, this is what I'm going to go to. But when I go to McDonald's, that burger tastes the same in every state.
That's the branding, that's the expectation, but that's really, really difficult. And that's one of the reasons why the cultivators, they try to grow and they try to standardize all these practices. I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to standardize my practices and my legal practice every day. But branding, I think, is really where people are able to make the differentiation, and in the very competitive field that it is, make a profit.
Well, and with branding, though, with cannabis too, when it comes to growing, you're not going to be able to grow the same plant over and over because it's just the way genetics work, you know. And I would consider each grow more of a batch. You know, that's how it should be looked at. Like this batch just got grown, you know, and a Blue Dream
Right.
From whatever grower in Washington, and then you sell that internationally or nationally. That's the only way you're going to be able to have that consistency, because if you have those state boundaries where each person has to get a different thing, the Blue Dream grown here is not going to be the same Blue Dream. You know, maybe they have a
right. I mean, like they could try to standardize the practice as much as they want. And I think that, well, that's really the struggle then, because I mean that McDonald's burger, whether you eat it in Nebraska or whether you eat it in Maine, is going to taste the same, and they aren't sourced from the same factory. So that Blue Dream that's grown, whether it's grown in California or it's grown in Illinois, provided that Blue Dream was grown the exact same way and put together the same way, it should taste and look and smell exactly the same. Of course, you know, it's a plant, so there are tiny micro variations, but those will just be like aesthetic ones when you're looking at it, hopefully.
Did you hear about the story about the cancer patient who ordered 42 pounds of chocolates infused from a California dispensary?
I heard that he got arrested. I did not read the rest of the story. I mean, that blows. But why did he order 42 pounds of this chocolate? Why did he live outside of the state? Yeah,
I believe he lived. I'm about to. I just copied and pasted the story, but it looks like another case of Alabama. Let me just check.
Well, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you're an Alabama cancer patient, he didn't buy them on the internet, did he? How would he be able to buy these on the internet? It'd be one thing if you drove to California and said, give me 42 pounds of your strongest cannabis chocolate, and then try to drive it out of the state and got popped that way. But I don't get the setup on this.
Well, and I question, like, if the actual dispensary sold it to him. You know, I think that there'd be more coming down from that shop alone if they. Oh, it's Illinois. He's in Illinois. Oh my God.
Well, no, we have medical cancer patients get medical cannabis in Illinois, so it's not like you needed to buy that then. I mean, he's got a 2.5. Well, cancer patients might actually be able to have more than 2.5 ounces per 2 weeks. They might get special treatment.
Kane County, is that ring a bell to you?
Kane County, yeah, it's further north than where I'm at, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, so most likely he must have had a friend send it to him, because you know that already is a federal thing. So that dispensary in California would have got raided and made a bunch of noise about it by now.
I've heard the regulation. I mean, like sometimes this dispensaries out in California are a little bit more lackadaisical with their adherence to rules and stricter than they are maybe like in Illinois. But that's just what I've heard. I haven't really checked out California's legal marijuana scene.
I'm just surprised he didn't find a local source.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, he lived in Illinois. He could have had his medical marijuana card. He could have just gone. Maybe he didn't like the chocolates that are being produced in Illinois, but he could have bought a whole bunch of cannabis oil and then made his own chocolates, but sounds like he did something stupid.
Oh, so Wobble says he was busted in 2014.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah, because 2014 would have been before the law really took effect, and it sucked. Like our medical marijuana law in Illinois sucked until at least like 2016. I even remember when I first got my card in 2017, the production still was kind of shit. I'd go to Colorado and I'd come back and I'd be like, all right, cool, I'm going to get a vape pen. And I'm like, oh, your guys' vape pens in this state are lame. They've gotten a lot better, but a couple of years there, the medical producers in the state were kind of weak.
It's just crazy, though. It's taken 5 years for this guy to see some sort of justice. I mean, what the fuck's going on with our system?
Oh, gosh. I mean, like, courts in Illinois, courts all over the place are overloaded, man. People sue each other too much over dumb shit.
Well, this is the cannabis cases, though. I mean, how many people
suing each other over dumb shit? Cannabis cases,
Well, but maybe with raids, people who had things confiscated or asset forfeiture. People's lives are ruined in one moment, and then they got to wait 5 years just to defend themselves. It just seems to me not speedy justice.
Justice delayed is justice denied, right? But it happens all the time. Like litigation takes a long, long time, and there's a lot of steps to it. I'm assuming criminal prosecutions do as well. I've never been in a criminal courtroom. I've never done family cases. I'm strictly business.
Yeah.
But and then speaking of that vein, back to the clients I used to represent. Federal Reserve official pledges to tell banks they can start servicing hemp businesses, which is good because even in Illinois, some of these hemp businesses, some of these banks are less likely to open accounts and to lend to hemp businesses. Some will be like, oh, we'll bank the hemp business, but we're not going to provide startup financing or something like that. And, it's interesting. And then it's going to be more interesting once they get that guidance, and that's going to be a piece that I'll be doing about cannabis related to legitimate businesses and the Safe Banking Act and how the state of Illinois has already put into it. And I believe in the Illinois adult use bill that just passed last week, that may have already been included, or they might have already approved it previously, the Cannabis Banking Act in Illinois, which is just like the Safe Banking Act. So with the hemp laws are, the Farm Bill did it, and then a lot of states like, oh my God, have you seen Iowa's hemp laws?
No.
They suck.
Really?
Oh, they're terrible. Like they are extremely, extremely rigid about their licensing for who might get a license to farm hemp. They still, like the hemp laws still ban like CBD and stuff like that in there, and like you can't like use it. And then also, they don't go into effect until the USDA. I mean, even though they're signed and they're on the books, so like Iowa can say they have a hemp law, but they don't have a hemp law because they aren't going to be enforced and available to cultivate until the USDA releases its rules, which might not be until 2020. So, them saying that they have a hemp law is just, no, you don't. If you had a hemp law, we could be growing hemp. You have a prohibition on having a hemp law until the feds say that you can actually grow it. And then also you still say, but you're not allowed to have the CBD. I should drop that one in the comments. Because that was one of the things. I'm like, I started like a Facebook page called Illinois Adult Use Laws. And then, people will be asking about various neighboring states. And I'm like, oh, what do you mean Iowa has hemp? And like, look, and I'm like, oh, it'd be like, you saying you have something even though you clearly don't have it. Yeah. That's essentially what they have. It's kind of like how, if we were involved in the Cold War and no matter what we had, the USSR would be like, yes, we have that too. And like their shit was like not anything good. It was just like painted on. That's their hemp law. It's terrible.
Well, it sounds to me like these bullshit tweets that Trump are throwing out about like stopping drugs, like this whole Mexico with the drugs. It's like, it's not Mexico with the drugs. It's the Americans and their consumption. It's nothing to do with Mexico.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry, if Americans would stop like shoving everything down their face and into their veins, then maybe and then deal with their addiction issues, maybe they wouldn't have this huge influx of drugs coming up from Mexico. to go into Americans because they like getting fucked up.
And the biggest thing about that is, and when I used to live in Tucson, it has been a known fact that marijuana was the main revenue generator for a lot of the cartels, just because Americans smoked pot, and that was like your least risky when you got caught with it, right? You're least demonized, least villainized if you're smoking a pound of fucking weed versus a pound of like meth.
Right. Than that, but I mean, it's still that stuff is what gets you in trouble. The most risky thing about the cannabis was getting caught with it, and it still is the most risky thing about the cannabis is getting caught with it, and it's kind of annoying.
I think we're at this like preacher's daughter syndrome where everybody's like woohoo when they turn 18 and realize that they've been lied to, and they're like, oh, weed's not that bad, so that means meth might not be bad.
Oh yeah, but that's ridiculous, and that's one of the things why we really are trying to get the cannabis legalized as fast as possible. I'm not going to sit here and tell everybody, and I understand that people are now like, well, now let's legalize mushrooms. That's fine. I don't think that there's going to be a very much support for the people that are going to be like, well, let's legalize everything, even heroin. Do we really want that legal? I mean, shouldn't we still have stop signs, even though people would know when they come to an intersection to slow down, right? No, of course not. But the legalization of every substance isn't going to necessarily, it shouldn't happen. They should be regulated, but they should be regulated appropriately. They shouldn't just turn a blind eye to all the facts about a substance and say, well, we're going to treat this as if it was heroin under the law.
Well, the biggest thing is we can take the Uruguay aspect. They did legalize everything, but it's all controlled. But cannabis is all fine. But say like here in Seattle, for whatever reason, dude, we have people with tents. Like they set up tents and sidewalks, like that. But it's a homeless mental health drug issue.
Right.
And so if they had a safe spot and there was a safe way for them to be treated as human beings, I think there might be a way to turn a lot of this sadness that we see in our streets, because it's not just Seattle. There's homeless and bad everywhere, in every big city, and drug issues. It's just
those really, and then especially a lot of them have the mental illness problem, but there really isn't a lot of place where you can get treatment for mental health, especially if you have no money. Like the wealthy people maybe can afford to go to rehab, or they can afford therapy. But a lot of people, especially after they started closing down all the asylums, which turned out just to be like a place where you would send some people just to have them go away and not be in your presence. But as a result, not just as a result of that, but because those aren't really around anymore, where is the treatment? Do they get any treatment at all? Not really. And then you have these types of problems. And what's their plan to fix it? Do they even have one?
Part of like methadone and all that shit.
Oh, methadone? No, I mean like homeless and stuff.
Dude, that's the thing. You can't throw millions of dollars and just say mental health, because mental health means each individual person has their own little daddy issues or whatever it is. You have to address it individually. It can't just be everybody's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's how people are. I mean, I hate people. I love animals, though. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm glad that you've thrown your entire species under the bus for a different one. That's great. You're really going to help us out of this mess. I don't know, man. I wish, and that's one of the cool things about the law that they have in Illinois. Maybe they're going to be able to fund some mental health training, mental health classes. I think one of the things that we do in America is make sure that people are just paranoid and depressed and alienated enough from one another so they feel like they need to buy something new.
Well, there's a lot of, in our justice system with the prohibition, it allows for a lot of injustices. I'm about to share another story. This guy, another old timer, 79-year-old pot farmer denied compassionate release for being blind.
Oh yeah, gosh, look at that guy. He looks like blind Santa Claus.
I'm just saying, we can't go after real threats. We have to, these non-violent, non-threatening offenders. Our priorities are messed up.
Yeah, and then we just talk about how our borders are falling apart and everything is something to be terrified over. Oh my gosh. Did I laugh with you about the senator from last week on the floor? It wasn't a senator; it was in House of Representatives last week, in the floor of Illinois about the "this is your brain on drugs" thing.
Oh, that's fucking brilliant, dude. That was fucking brilliant.
Oh my gosh, I can't. But that's still today. People believe everything, and it's terrifying.
And he's in charge of something. That's the sad part of it all.
A lot of these people are in charge of things. That's, again, it gets back to, my God, that's terrifying. But then a lot of people that are in administration are extremely competent, good people with nice hearts that just want to do their job, give back, go back to their families, and watch, TV at night and go back to work the next day. And that's how we all get by. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're not all going to hell in a handbasket, but some of us are.
Yeah, no, I agree. Speaking of work, I got to go back to work.
Oh, man, good. You do that. I'm going to go outside and sneeze. The allergies are acting up a little again. But big week in the cannabis legalization news. Next week, we'll be back hopefully on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. to discuss what happened then. All right, see you next time.